I'll just follow you, man.
Welcome, guys, to another episode. So today's episode's a fun one. I've got a special guest today. We got a local celebrity. Okay, I've got Jerrid. I got Jerrid. We're going to be talking about all things marketing, and we're also going to be talking about how you can grow your business. He's going to be sharing his experience. We're going to be talking about influencers. He's a little bit of an influencer. If you look at a little bit of his LinkedIn and what he does on the social media presence, make sure to kind of pause. If you're on Spotify, just do me a favor, hit the follow button. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and like the video. Jerrid, let's go ahead, man. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name is Jerrid Sebesta. I do business development for a retirement planning firm in West Central Minnesota, out in the middle of the country. I just partnered with my boss, now business partner, and we started a business consulting firm called the Aligned Advisor to help other financial firms grow their business the way that we did it. My background is in media and TV. I was a TV weatherman for 12 years, which always gets a really big reaction. So I'm able to bring kind of my skill set of communication, connecting with people, and maybe a little bit of weather occasionally in my current job. But that's where I'm at. I'm hopelessly middle aged. I'm 44 years old. I've got 4 kids at home, and we live on a hobby farm in West Central Minnesota. So that's a little background on me.
So it's interesting. I mean, you gotta talk a little bit about the weatherman stuff. I mean, it's only fair you talk a little bit about the weatherman stuff. So, how'd you get into the the weatherman space?
Yeah,
Say?
yeah.
And how was that? Because you see, and it's like, and it's it's the weather. Do you which is this is also like a personal question. Do you guys actually pre-record everything, or is it like everything's all done live?
We should do an entire podcast just on TV weather. I should have written books on this, but no. I was fascinated with weather. I was a little science kid. I loved the natural sciences. The weather scared me to death. By the way, I was raised. Most of my upbringing, I was raised in a trailer home. So every time that the wind blew, I thought I was going to die. And so I had this fascination and reverence for the weather. I remember telling my teachers at 5 years old, or like in 5th grade, I wanted to be a weatherman. When I got to college, I played college basketball, so I was a little distracted in college with that, and always assumed I was going to work at a National Weather Service. And I was pressured by my teachers and advisors by the time I graduated college, like, what are you going to do with this? And it was very apparent that the really smart people, and that's not being self-derogatory, but the really smart kids are the ones that went into the government jobs and stuff. And at 22, 23 years old, I realized that my skill set really was in storytelling. I was the guy who, if you were telling a story or telling a joke and you were botching it, I would have to interrupt and tell the punchline, because I feel like I could tell the punchline better than anybody in the room. And so I ended up taking an internship at a small station in northern Minnesota, and immediately was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so I got into the business at a small market, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And then I went to Phoenix, Arizona in 2007. And then I ended up in Minneapolis. So I spent most of my 12-year career in bigger markets. And really, at the end of the day, no, it's done live. Most of it is done live. The newscasts are done live. Everything else, for the most part, is recorded, to answer that question. But the art, so to speak, in doing TV weather is that you get 3 minutes, depending on what market you're in and how much time you get. But you have total freedom. It's unscripted. We're not reading anything. People think that we're reading stuff. We're not. It's ad-libbed, and nobody's really telling you what to say. The producer's like, you got 3.5 minutes, go. And so there was tremendous freedom in being able to communicate in your own personality. A lot of people said, like, the thing I respect about you is that you're the same person on off camera. And I'm like, well, I have to be. I'm not that good of an actor. So what you see is what you get. And so that's where my skill set is. When I left television in 2014, serendipitously ended up in the financial world. I'm not a financial advisor. I came on as a marketing kind of / PR guy that's turned into business development. But really, as I've gotten older, really all I've done is just double down on this idea of how to connect with people and use media to connect. And we've grown our business here 6x since 2015. And if I look back on it, it was just through the art of connection using media. So that's kind of how the two worlds have collided.
So what skill sets just trying to interrupt you there. So what skill sets would you say translated from when you were doing the weather service to, now that you're pretty much in the marketing side of the media connection side of things?
Yeah. Communication. Really, it's really just how to, I think we'll get deeper into this, but really being insanely genuine
Okay.
I didn't try to be anybody else. I really didn't. And I'm not suggesting that most people on TV do, but you see a little bit. You get to know people and you get to kind of know who they are. And then you watch them when they do a weathercast or newscast, and they kind of try to change a little bit. I never tried to do that. I just tried to be as genuine as I could. I'm an emotional communicator. I'm very quick. Like, again, we've been on this show here for just a couple of minutes already, and I'm already just kind of sharing
Yeah.
who I am, and I think that that's really important. And so when I got into the financial business, which by the way is a very guarded business.
How so? Unpack that if you can.
Well, like for example, we're dealing with people's money, and so financial professionals tend to be very, very guarded by how they present themselves, because they don't want to give any inclination that they're not trustworthy. Which as a result, I won't be as authentic. I will not be as truthful. And I don't mean truthful as like lying to like cheat and steal, but like I won't give you everything. I won't show you I'm not going to show you everything that's inside of here, because I don't want you to think one way or the other when it comes to how I may, help you. And we just play by a different playbook. The one thing that I did right away when I got to this firm is I started to dig into my boss, who started the company, about 10 years prior to me arriving. And I just started asking questions. And I was like, we should, this is like 2015. So like sales funnels were like new back then, like building an ebook and giving it away.
Oh, like free. ClickFunnels, Russell Brunson, right?
Like that was like, now it's like everybody knows this stuff. Back then, that was like a big deal. And I was like, we should give away something on our website. Like, let's write an ebook together. I'll create like a 20-page pamphlet, and we'll give it away in exchange for a name or an email. Like, this is mind-blowing stuff, right? And I sat down with him, and we just started to talk, and he busted out this little black book. This one's red, but this is kind of like my personal little journal. But he busted out this little black book and had all these stories and all these things that he was passionate about. He was so passionate about, and still is, about the life side of retirement. It's not just about making rich people richer and paying less in taxes. It's about really trying to connect the retirement to their life, to where they don't retire, they do something more. Like, retirement's not the end, it's the beginning. Gotcha. If we're inspiring people to make so much money so now they can now not work and do nothing the rest of their life, we're not doing it right. And I was like, dude, like, that's not an ebook. Like, that's a book. Like, I haven't read every book from financial advisors, but even 1 year into the space at the time, I'm like, we're talking a different language. And so that I helped him produce a book, and that turned into the very first book that was the biggest piece of media that was ever pushed out of our firm, is this little green book right here.
Repurposed.
It's called Repurposed: The Untold Story of Retirement in America. And this thing here is a very simple read. And this is kind of the foundational, I'm not going to call it doctrine, but this is the foundation of like letting ourselves come out, like letting our true essence come out. And then that turned into eventually a podcast called Retire Repurposed. And that turned into a weekly radio show that we call Time, Talent, Treasure Radio. And that turned into a class that we call Repurposed University. And now it's like we wake up 8, 9, 10 years later, and it's like, holy cow, like what did we just do here?
Yeah.
And it was really fun as we started to build our consulting business to help other advisors. It was just a fun exercise for me to look in the mirror and be like, what did we do? What did we do that we could replicate? Because originally we always thought, and this is true, I'm being very, very transparent here. We thought the key was like, we're going to teach everybody to speak this language, repurpose. This is what's working for us. This is what's creating market differentiation for us. This is creating a platform for us. This is what's making us unique to the market. And everybody should speak this language. And then something clicked about 6 months ago. I was like, why would we teach other businesses to speak our language? Because that might not be their language. The things that we talk about on our shows and our podcasts and in the media we put out, it's just purely an expression of us, but that might not be an expression of them. And if we're trying to force our identity on them and have them talk our talk, then we're not teaching them to be true and authentic.
So
and to me, go ahead.
No, go ahead. So yeah, because what do you teach them? Let's say I'm an advisor and I'm like I come in, I'm like, hey guys, listen, this and this is our book of business. This is what's going on. How do you get me to be able to speak my message per se? And is it more or less like speaking my message to the customers, or are we talking about more of like the online presence that I'm putting out there?
Well, I would say both. I would say both and. So yes. So like again, the B2B business that we have going on, it's a softer approach, and you have to think we're dealing with financial advisors and tax professionals, which are all about processes, structure. How do I eliminate time waste? How do I touch fewer papers? How can I streamline processes? Which, by the way, are all very, very important. But usually, again, financial and tax people, they're very logical, especially tax people. They got their calculators out. They think black and white, and so we come at them with, we actually think, and by the way, if you do those things, you'll reach a level of success. That's my boss's testimony. Before we started really doing what we're doing very well, he was doing the thing. He was acting like the financial advisor. He was presenting himself like everybody else. And what shifted the turning point for us is when we really started to look inside as to who we were, created the framework by which we operate, not just a mission statement, but created the framework as to what makes us insanely unique, and then powerfully took that to the marketplace in media and meetings. So to answer your question, the very first thing that we are teaching other advisors and tax professionals to do is to find what makes them unique. They are very special. Everybody's very special. And this is a tough sell for a lot of people. The best thing that you can do for your business, the best thing that you can do for your life, for your family, is to take a very significant, radical deep dive inside. I always thought that the keys to my success were out there. Like he's got the golden ticket. I have to read her book. I have to go there. And what I'm realizing at 44 years old is that the keys to my success, I already have them. God already gave them to me. They're already inside of me, and they're already inside of you. And all you got to do is like go and discover them. And in fact, not only do you have the keys, the success that you're seeking is actually seeking you. And so we have to just start there. Go ahead.
I'm going to push back here if you don't mind if I push back here. Okay. So I'm going to just use some stats. So if you looked at the stats as to, right now, as we're talking, there's thoughts probably going on in your head. You're probably thinking about something to say, right? Now, I don't know. So recently I did a live and I had to do some research, and I looked at the stats, and what percentage of people would you take a guess that don't actually have that internal dialogue going on in there? What would you say? 20%, 50%, 60%, 30%?
The amount of people that are not self-aware, or what is
that?
That
they don't have that internal dialogue. Like that self thinking, like when you're just alone or you just start thinking.
Sure. 50%.
And you'd be actually right. So 50 to 70% of people actually don't have like a free form thought. And I was looking at that from that perspective of internal reflection, for instance, right? I believe, yes, we do have all that gift, but majority of people, it's going to sound bad, but majority of people want to be led. They want you to do the internal self-thinking for them. That's the reason why most people go to seminars. And, because it's like, let's say you go to Tony Robbins and he says, you need to forgive your family for the way they raised you if you want to move forward. You knew you had to do that. Right. And I don't, that's kind of my thing is, what about if you're in that position where there is not really that much self-thought that's going on in there?
Well, I have said, as we have kind of put this out there, it's not for everybody at all times. I believe in the mantra of, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so I think that there will be different people that will kind of quote unquote wake up to this idea at different times. And so my hope is that the people that are kind of getting into this, we're there for them. But I also, as a coach, I also realize that my job isn't to, force you to do it. My job isn't to do it for you. I can't. My job is to inspire, but also create an atmosphere to invite you into the journey that you're already on. And so we try to very uniquely and powerfully try to like guide people to take a look at these different areas, one of which is really your personality. Like everybody is uniquely made. I just watched a video. It was something to the fact of like the chances of you shuffling a deck of cards the same way twice. The chances are so astronomical. Like this guy laid it out on a Facebook video. He said, you would have to take like 10 billion people, which is the amount of people that have like ever been on planet Earth. And you need to give them like a billion deck of cards, and they need to shuffle those cards a billion times a second. And even after millions of years, the chances of you like shuffling that deck of cards the same way twice is only like 40%. I can't wrap my brain around that. And you look how complex the human DNA structure is. And so the chances of you being you and me being me are astronomically low. So we have to understand how we are created. And for me, again, I'm passionate about this journey because I'm on it right now. And there's things that I'm waking up to almost weekly or daily that I'm learning about myself. And I had a big one hit me. It was now 6 weeks ago. I took a personality test. It was called the Culture Index Survey.
Okay.
I highly recommend it. But I took that. It only took like 10 minutes. And I was walking through the results with a lady on the phone. And she goes, Jerrid, you're very unique. She's like, your soft skills are off the charts. Your ability to read emotion is off the charts. But she goes, I got to tell you, you have no patience. You have like, you're in the bottom 1 percentile. And I rebutted her. I said, well, I've got now 4 children. I go, one of my children has ADHD. And I said, as a result, I've been forced to grow in patience because of just circumstances. And she goes, have you been able to see some traction in patience? And I was like, yeah. And so again, I was kind of offended that she would dare call me impatient.
Yeah.
And she goes, Jerrid, the fact that you have seen movement in that character trait of yours is commendable because you're just not wired for it. She goes, Jerrid, this is just how God created you. She goes, you could take this test in 20 years and it will show the exact same thing. You're not broken. You just are who you are. And I will tell you, that was profound. And I've told her since then how profound that statement was to me because I just accepted who I was. I always thought I was broken. I always thought, I'm just not, there's certain things about me that are a work in progress. I will never arrive. And again, I've taken that on as an identity as I'm broken. And so there was something very, I wouldn't even say healing, but very liberating to just understand this is how I'm uniquely created. And I have actually seen, that was only 6 weeks ago that I took that test and had that conversation. I have seen the traction in my life even ramp up since then. So this idea of self-discovery, of understanding our personality, but also understanding how our past experiences have come into play, understanding our mindset, how our mindset will fog the vision of who we are, our vision of money, our vision of our business, because you can really understand yourself, but if your mindset's all screwed up, man, it will clutter and fog how you look at life. And so when we walk people through this, it's really an encapsulation of those 3 things. And so that's where we start. But I got to tell you, it's not for everybody because not everybody's ready for that type of journey at that point.
Okay, so let's dive into the personality. So what type of personalities would you say struggle a lot in the financial in the space?
Well, financial people tend to be very analytical.
Okay.
People who are finding success are probably natural high achievers. I would say high achievers tend to be very what's the word? I don't want to say self-condemning, but they're very self-critical. And I've heard this story. You could get 100 like multi-millionaires in the room, and you could say, raise your hand if you just like, feel unworthy and you just, you beat yourself, and they would all raise their hand. Like they just do, and because there's something very high achievers tend to be their biggest critic, but they also understand that there's something inside them that makes them special, but they also feel very not worthy or incapable of actually pulling it off. But on the outside, they're crushing it. I mean, to you and I, they're crushing it, but inside they get in their head. And so there's something I think very special about the idea of of wanting to push and grow abundance, take dominion over. But usually at the very same time, we actually have kind of the self-critical aspect. And I'm no different. Go ahead.
I'm very curious. So, we live in an era now where the word ego is determined as toxic, right? People call the word ego. If I say, "Hey, you have an ego," if someone's like, "I have an ego," it's like you're all of a sudden a toxic individual. And you said something there in a sense as to they have this sense of self-worth, self-value. I remember I was having a conversation with someone, and he said, we're talking about competition, and I'm like, and he's like, and I'm like, what happens if you lose? And he's like, I'm not gonna lose. I was like, dude, he's like, I'm not gonna lose. And I'm like, dude, he said, I was like, Emmanuel, I'm not going to lose. And I'm okay. Well, and he won, but then again, it's someone might see that as ego, overconfidence, and I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm very curious what your take on the whole societal thing, where, because I personally believe America was founded on entrepreneurship, right? The vision that self-expression, right? Reach inside and use your potential, but we are telling people that if you believe too strongly in yourself, you're egotistic, and that's bad. So what would you say to that? What would you say if you have someone that kind of has that belief and they're afraid to be more because they're afraid of, that their self-belief might hurt someone else in a sense?
Well, I think pride and ego are probably two different things. I think in a Christian form, we can, pride's bad, but is ego bad, and are they the same thing? So there's probably a little bit of a theological.
How would you differentiate it? If you, I know we're kind of getting a little into, how would you differentiate it?
Well, you could go down a rabbit trail and say, like, well, what's your motive? Because if I believe that I'm worthy of going out and doing great things so I can help humanity, well, is that you're being egotistical? Now, if I say, like, I'm going to go out there and I'm using my gifts and my pride or ego to go out and take advantage of people and crush people, well, that's not really righteous either. You know what I mean? So you could almost look at it through the lens of what is your intent. When I see people who are going after it, thinking big, thinking abundance, thinking self-worth, but they're doing it under the context or the goal of bettering humanity, go. Because abundance says the more you succeed, the more I succeed. I mean, unless you're doing something that is, again, ill intent against fellow man, to me, that's where you're getting into a gray area. And it's a great question, and and to be blatant, I don't know where that line of ego versus pride and where that line is, but that's a deep question, and I don't have an answer for you.
And it's interesting why, because I'm one of the reasons why the podcast started was because I wanted a deep understanding of what goes on in everyone's, like, I'm very curious as to the how your mind works, for instance. That's why I'm asking like these questions. And what is fascinating to me is you said that one of the key concepts of success is you need a healthy ego, in this instance. You need to believe in yourself strongly enough where people are going to be like, well, you're not going to do it. Like, I am actually going to do it. But you also, same thing, you have to be I lost your video feed there.
Just keep going. Yeah. Sorry about that.
And then you also kind of have to be in a position where where you're pretty much, in a sense, is too self-critical, right? But most people will come to a position where they see your egotism or basically your self-belief as it's been perceived as bad.
Yeah.
Right. So, but that's why I'm very fascinated with the personality, because let's say I'm a financial advisor and I'm coming in and I'm like, I strongly believe, you know what, I can crush it, I can do it. But then everyone around me is like, who do you think you are?
Well, let me throw an example. Okay, so let me give you an example. Okay, so I have sorry about my camera. I apologize for that. This is, again, very personal, very transparent. I have always driven a very junky car. Okay. And not only have I driven a junky car, I've actually taken that as a badge of honor. Like I don't need that. That's people who drive really nice cars and spend a lot of money, that's egotistical. They love money. They're trying to be flashy. And you could accuse them of being all the negative, in the negative contexts of ego and pride. You know what I'm saying? And as my mind has kind of opened to more of abundance and away from fear and scarcity and about just being pegged over on, one side of the spectrum, I start to kind of see the context by which they're operating. And so right now, by the way, I live in a small town, and I'm actually known. I'm a big guy. Like I'm 6'6". I used to be a college basketball player, and I drive a little tiny junky car.
Okay.
And so rumors are flying that Jerrid's going to upgrade his vehicle. And so right away they're like, well, he's going to get another kind of, very junky car and drive the wheels out of it, because that's been my story for so long. Okay. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, you know what? The next car I get, it's going to make a statement. It's going to make. It's going to. What are you getting? Well, I don't want to go there, but I've got some options out there.
Okay.
All right. But here's the thing, and I've been able to kind of process this and articulate it. That next car I get, whatever it is going to make a radical statement. It's going to be an abrupt change, but that car will represent a shift and almost a death into how I think, but also how I think about myself. And I said this to someone yesterday. I said, when I drive that car, it won't be a statement to you as a status symbol. It's going to be a statement to myself that I'm actually worth it and worthy to have it. And again, the practical side, again, I've lived in middle America, right? So like if somebody's driving a fancy car right off, it's like, why would they spend that? They don't need that. And I said to somebody yesterday, I wonder how many of my dreams have been squashed in the name of practicality, because I set my mind on what I need, not what I want. I just heard a speaker in Salt Lake City on a conference this weekend. He said, having wants isn't bad. In the Christian context, it's like, oh, you want those big things. You're being prideful. You're being egotistical, and we suck our mind down into practicality mode, not just what we want. The book 10X is Greater Than 2X by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I'm reading it right now. He talks about this. He goes, there's nothing more autonomous or having freedom to say, this is what I want out of life. I don't have to explain it to you. I don't have to defend myself. I want what I want. And I have so many times wanted things. And when people say, what do you want out of life? And I give them a BS answer, because I'm giving it through the lens of scarcity and practicality. And just last night, I ran me and my family through an exercise. I have 4 kids, small. I said, we're going to make a list of 100 things that we want. Do not be apologetic. Do not think about logistics. Think about the things we want. And we went around the table, and my kids kind of laughed at some of the things that they wanted. And I said, if that's what you want, great. And this wasn't a Christmas wish list. It was just, it's what you want. And then here's the thing about your mind. If you want the big thing, but you've got yourself convinced that you don't need it, your mind will automatically only compute solutions to what you think you need. And I have seen that in my life so much, where it's like, I make my life so small because this is all that I need. And then I wonder, how come I can't break to the next level? How come I feel like I have so much inside of me and I can add so much value, but I can never break to the next level? And for me, it was understanding how I thought about myself. And again, if I could hear myself speak now about, you know what, I'm going to go get the nice car, and it's going to be a statement to me. If I would have heard myself say that 3 years ago, I would have accused myself of being egotistical. I would have accused myself of being prideful. But now I see the difference. It's not about showing you what I got. It's about showing myself and proving it to myself. Because I got to tell you, you asked what car. This is a true story. I went and test drove a BMW M8.
Okay.
3 weeks ago. And I purposely took my 12-year-old son because I wanted him to feel what it felt like, because I wasn't told as a kid that I could have those things. And so I told the salesman, who's a friend of mine, I said, Joel, we're coming to test drive the M8 competition on your lot. I have no interest in buying it today. I'm not going to buy it, but this is mental exercise for me, and I want to show my son what's possible. And so we went and we drove the car, and he's like, I won't pay for your speeding tickets, but let's go. And he goes, when that light turns green, he goes, you pin it. And I did. And we were giggling like school children in the car. But here's the thing, that car did not feel like it was mine. I felt like I was like driving like this thing that just was not mine. And one of the things I wanted, that I shared with my family last night, is I said, I want to drive a $100,000 car someday, and I want to feel like I deserve it. I don't want to feel like it's somebody else's and I can't dare, hit the gas too hard. I want to feel like it's mine. And I want to do that to show off to the neighbors or to my friends. I want that feeling because I want me to believe it. I want me to understand that I'm deserving of it. And the people who live in practical scarcity mindset will scoff, and they probably will. And what they don't understand, because it's the same thing I didn't understand. Why did you spend that much money in a car when you could have given that money to charity? Because the mindset that creates, the mindset that, let's say I get the M8, boss. So the mindset that M8 will create in my mind will allow me to go and create so much more wealth to give so much more to charity in the future. It would have been better off that I got the M8 than got the Camry or whatever. And I'm not poo-pooing Camrys. I used to have one. They're great. But the M8 is going to allow my mind to open up so much more that it's going to pave the way for me to create more value and to create more wealth in the future.
And
that's a tough sell for a lot of folks, including myself, a year or two ago.
So what was that opening shift where you had to realize that there had to be a way in which you had to go from that guy going, I could have given this $100,000 to charity, versus let me get this car to change my mindset, because now I can attract more, because there's a saying that it takes money to attract money. A desperate person struggles to sell because they have no money. But then it's like when you pull it, for instance, you pull up into an M8. I mean, everyone is like, now the quality of even your clientele is different, because no one is going to be like, well, Jerrid's in an M8. He's gonna charge me, $500 or $1,000 for my service. No, it's gonna be like, Jerrid's gonna be like, well, unfortunately, it's a startup of a $5,000 consultation fee. We're like, hey, he's got that M8 and M8 competition. I mean, it's a $109,000 car, right? Yes. So when was that mindset shift for you?
I love it. Thank you for asking that question. Everything changed for me on January 1, 2022. I was coming out of a really dark period, out of COVID. COVID really put me in a place of fear. At that time, I was listening to all the noise going on in the world. I was filling my head up with all the noise. And when I looked at the future, I kid you not, it was black. There was no, I know I looked at the future, a year, 2 or 3, there was no happy ending to this. I was just in a very dark place. And I went for a walk with my wife on January 1, 2022. And I said, you know what? I'm tired of playing defense. I'm ready to play some offense again. And there were certain people online that I followed, and I'm like, they don't talk about everything that I'm talking about. They're talking about growth, value, business. I'm like, I want to be like that. I want to talk like that. I want to think like that. So I kind of proverbially put the flagpole in the sand, and I said, I'm not doing it anymore. And I shut off all the noise as much as I could. And I just started reading books. And I went to a friend of mine named Tim Shermack, who's an entrepreneur from my hometown. He owns a company called Platform Marketing. And he was one of the guys I'm like, these guys just talk differently. And I got a hold of Tim Shermack. He didn't know I existed at the time. I got his phone number. I called him. I said, what do I got to read? And he gave me like 5 books. And that was the journey. It was like, read. The first book he told me to read was The 5-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And that book was the most exhilarating yet depressing book I've ever read.
How so?
Because it was exhilarating because there's a whole nother way of looking at life. Again, I just followed the template, right? I came from small town America. I came from single, mom, single family home, and I was very well loved. Don't get me wrong, but like I wasn't taught how to think any differently than just live, pay bills, and live for the weekend, and then just that's it. And so there was something so exhilarating about reading that book, but it was depressing because I realized how kind of like I'm part of the matrix. It's kind of like, it's like you see all these people and they're zombies in the matrix. And that was me. And so that was kind of like the first quote unquote awakening. And so I read more books. Another book I read, and he's one of my favorite authors, is Garrett Gunderson. He wrote a book called Killing Sacred Cows. I read that, or actually I listened to that book last summer. That book blew my mind. I read stuff by Dr. Benjamin Hardy, started talking about mindset and getting our mind off of scarcity. And I started to realize, man, there's scarcity woven in my thoughts all over the place. And so it's been a slow, I shouldn't say slow. It's been a very abrupt and very aggressive journey. And I just start saying yes to stuff. When you live in scarcity, you say yes to nothing. When you live in scarcity, experience, comfort, and enjoyment is always trumped by practicality. You don't say yes to anything. And I look through the lens of life, always through the price tag. Everything did. It caused ruffles in my marriage. It caused ruffles in my children. And I started seeing scarcity show up in them. I would see it really would break my heart. We go to a restaurant, and I'd say, let's order. And my daughter would be like, well, I'm just going to get water because pop costs too much. We call it pop here in Minnesota. Okay. And I was like, that's scarcity. And so now I'm on a mission to not only put that to death in my own head. And that's why I told Joel from the BMW dealer, I go, Joel, I'm going to keep coming back here and I'm going to keep driving cars. And I'm not going to drive a car until it's dead, until that mindset is dead. And going back to our original question, you could accuse me on the outside, if you're just looking at it at face value, Jerrid is now turning prideful and egotistical. Am I? Or am I just now fully understanding what I'm capable of, what God has given me, and being true to who I am? So where's that line? You know what I'm saying? Like that you got to go pretty deep to really understand exactly where that line is for everybody, without just looking at, somebody's car, somebody's watch, or how they live. It goes much, much deeper than that.
No, you said a lot, which is interesting, because it's almost, there's a saying that you almost have to hit a point. It's not, I wouldn't call it rock bottom, but you almost have to reach a point in which the mindset that you've been using for the longest, you realize it's not taking you where you need to go. So you need to you need to do like a software update, right?
Amen.
And I think for you, which just by you saying what you're saying, it's like it's, if I'm not mistaken, what happened was you kind of realized, like, in a sense, as to the goals and dreams that you want, you almost have to become a different person to get it, right? But also you have to formulate a thought pattern or a thought habit. And I'm very curious, prior to January 1st, what were those habits that you had? Because I believe habits play a big role.
Just quickly to your point, you almost have to become a new person. Marshall Goldman has the quote, to get, oh my goodness, come to me, Jerrid, get to me. What got you here won't get you there. What got you here won't get you there. And that came up in, like, it seemed like every podcast and every book I read, it was like they keep quoting this. And 10x is greater than 2x. Benjamin Hardy says that. He's like, what got you here won't get you there. And I was like, this is God speaking to me. Yes, it's time to, and it's true. It's 100% true. Processes are good and mindsets are good, to some extent, and they'll get you to a certain point. But if you want to go to the next level, you're going to have to make those things kind of, be dead, so to speak, and move on. And not that they need to maybe put to death is maybe a little bit abrupt. You just need to move on and evolve and morph into the next thing. Some habits. Big. I'm glad you asked that. The big one for me, I have understood. This is why you have to understand yourself. I'm built. I have a very high frequency. You can tell by the rate at which I speak. I'm fast paced. I'm a mover and a shaker. I have to physically move my body. My wife is the complete opposite. And the way that she recharges is to rest. Dude, resting drives me bananas. And so yes, I have to rest, and I engineer that. We try to take one day where we don't do literally a Sabbath break. We're just gonna unplug and unwind every single week, and that's 100% healthy. But I got to tell you, that's difficult for me. I still want to rest, but yet there's still some things I want to get done, and I certainly want to move my body even on those quote unquote rest days. But here's the thing: as I've learned about my personality, I'm done apologizing for that. That's just how I'm wired. God made me that way, and so I don't need to apologize and think that I'm broken because I don't like resting that much. I will do it, but that's just not how I'm built. I have realized about myself is that between the hours of 3 and 6 a.m., that is when my mind is the worst and or most susceptible to going off the rails. When I wake up in the middle of the night, more times than not, it's 3:03, 3:06, 3:09. And if I'm not careful, I will let a thought come into my head, and bam, then it starts going around and around and around. And every time it goes around, it gets a little bit bigger and a little bit scarier. And then pretty soon by 6 o'clock in the morning, now I've got myself kind of wound up, so to speak. So one habit that I've done is I've just really tried to release a lot of that garbage. If I happen to wake up between the hours of 3 and 6 and I have a thought, I have to just really kind of separate. The art of separating thought. We are not our thoughts. We can't control our thoughts. We can take every thought captive, like the Bible says, but we can't control our thoughts. I mean, that'd be amazing if we could control our thoughts. We can't control our thoughts, but we can control how we react to them, what we do with them. And you have to understand that you're not your thoughts. The second piece to that is that every morning, a lot of people get up and they want to meditate, they want to read, they want to get coffee and be still. That I can't do that. When I get up, I have to move my body. The very first thing I do in the morning is I go for a walk around our section. I live in the country, so we call like circles sections, right? Okay. So if I walk around the section, it's a mile and a quarter. It takes me about 35 minutes. Winter, rain, shine, extreme cold, extremely hot. Every morning I walk. And that used to be a time where I would let my thoughts continue. Again, if I had bad thoughts from 3 to 6, then they continue to spin around. A big habit that I've shifted in is on that morning walk, I start with thankfulness. I look up at the sky, whether it's gray, dark, shining, snowing, I find something to be thankful for. I had the honor of hearing Dr. Jordan Peterson speak this weekend. Okay. In the flesh. I was there watching him in a theater in Salt Lake City. And he talked about gratitude and thankfulness. And he goes, I meet people all the time. And he says this in his French Canadian accent. It was so funny. He's like, and people ask me like, be thankful about what? He's like, well, be thankful that you're not on fire. All right. Because if you've ever been on fire and you're not on fire, you're going to be thankful that you're not on fire. And of course the crowd laughs, but it's true. And I told that story to my kids last night. I go, I have to be better at practicing gratitude, because the reality is because of how I'm wired in my background, I tend to grumble and will go very quickly to complaining. And so gratitude doesn't come naturally to me. And so going back to what Jordan Peterson said, what he said, practice. You're not used to telling the truth, practice. You're not used to being grateful, practice. And so that morning walk for me has been really practicing mindset training about how to be thankful, how to be thankful for the opportunities. Don't grumble about the things I have on my schedule. Be thankful. And if anybody's dove into personal development, you know these concepts. But you asked me what habit has shifted. That's been a major one. Understanding how I think, understanding where my worst times of the day are, and then engineering my day to combat my biology. I'm very susceptible biology by how I'm created to fall into certain traps. And so I'm going to engineer my day to trump the biology that's working against me. But again, going back to our original conversation, you have to know this. You have to understand how you're created. You have to understand your personality. You have to understand what makes you unique. But don't apologize for it. Work with it. Accept it. You're not broken. I thought I was broken for years. You're not broken. Understand who you are. Engineer your day. Think in the right ways. Combat negative thought with separating, letting go, being thankful. That's been the biggest one for me in the last year and a half.
So there's a lot to unpack there, man. You definitely said a lot there, because I'm just processing it, and obviously I know you do a lot of motivational speaking, but I felt very much motivated there. But it's very interesting to think about gratitude, because like you said, Jordan Peterson was saying, like, what people like, what am I going to be grateful for? And he's like, be grateful for not being on fire. and I'm just thinking to my end of things is, what about if you're grateful for the bad things, which is interesting. So someone was explaining this to me in regards to gratitude, and he goes, imagine if your car broke down, and you're like, well, that's a bad thing. And the car broke down, and you had a very important meeting. You had to be at work. This meeting was a promotion. It was going to be $100,000 extra, give or take, right? And you cannot miss the meeting. But for some reason, you did not show up because your car broke down. People are going to be like, oh my God, it's the devil, all that stuff, right? But little did you know that there was someone that was on the road that was driving, but let's say there was someone that was going to be, not paying attention, maybe texting and driving. And maybe that was a day in which they were going to run into your car. Mm-hmm. Right. But it's like, what about if the bad things sometimes are like, if you look at the story, in the Bible, and you look at the way, almost like the way God works is, because if you pay, I don't know if you, obviously we all know the story of the Israelites and how they spent 38 years, roaming around the wilderness and all that time. What about if it's a what is happening? Those bad things are happening because there is something, either it's preventing something bad from happening,
Mhm.
or in a way it's we're learning a lesson that will be useful in the future. Because it's you talk about storytelling in the beginning, when you mentioned the stories and everything you had to you've been through, and the story of your daughter having to order, and she was like, I gotta only get water because everything else costs money. It's interesting because stories are what people connect you with you on,
Mhm.
right? Like, if you imagine if you had to speak to like a 100 or 200 people, and all you just did was just use bullet points, everyone fall asleep. But you'd be like, hey,
Mhm.
I remember the one time I was having, lunch with my family, and then this happened, and everyone's like, boom, you have the audience. So I kind of think, in my perspective, I don't know about what you think about this, but I've kind of learned to be grateful for the, like, I'll give you a story. So this was 10 years ago. I hadn't seen my mom in a while. I was still in school. I was learning, and I had gotten into it with this lady, and she made something up. And next thing you know, I got kicked out of school. Long story short, I had to go home. So I remember I went back home, and we ended up finding out later it was a lie. But I went back home, and my mom was diagnosed with stroke since I was 2. So technically, she's kind of like, she pretty much just stays at home.
Mhm.
And I remember that day I was helping my father work, and it was really boring at the office. So I went back home, and my mom was the only one that was there. And I remember I said hi to her, tried to take a nap, couldn't take a nap, and now I was walking downstairs to leave, and I'm like, "Hey, mom, I'll see you later." And she didn't respond. She always responds, right? So I'm like, "Hey, mom, I'll see you later." She never responds, and then I walk up the stairs. As I'm walking up the stairs, I see her foaming,
Mm.
right? I see her foaming. And I carried her, got the neighbors, we rushed her to the hospital, and she was in kind of like a coma state for like a few months. And then I'm looking at it from a perspective of, if what happened with the lady never happened and never would have gone home, my mom would have been alone and she'd have been dead.
Mhm.
Right. So in a way, I was kind of like grateful for the lady, because I was like, maybe that was God using you.
Sure.
Right. So in a way, I don't know. That's my perspective is like, I always kind of look at things as to be grateful for the good, be grateful for the bad, as long as there's a lesson to be learned from it. We just don't know that, we don't know what the outcome might be.
I heard somebody say life is really a school of lessons, and the longer it takes to learn lessons, the more difficult the experiences will be until you learn them. And
Sure.
I'm misquoting that, but you kind of get the idea. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm even kind of going down this idea of like, people will say, I went through, and this is not me. I haven't done this, but like I've gone through a really painful divorce, and it was painful, and I made horrible decisions. Right, as humans, like we take that to heart and we beat ourselves up over that. And there was a gentleman I was hearing speaking. He was just like, yeah, but it got you to here. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like, we've all heard my mess is turned into my message.
Yeah.
Turn the pain into purpose and let that be your story.
Mm.
You're hearing these in different ways, but it's all saying the same thing. And again, I was going back to this one gentleman who was like, how can your past not be perfect if it got you to here?
Mm.
And of course the instant rebuttal from especially faith-based people, there's no perfect person except for Jesus. We're all
Yeah.
broken and we're all sinners. And it's like, yeah, but if it got you to here, how can it be anything but perfect? That's not
Mm.
to say that there wasn't consequences. That's Jordan Peterson talked about that. He talked for an hour and 45 minutes. If I have to encapsulate what he talked about, which if you ever heard him talk about, that dude is smart and articulate. He wanders all over the place with his message. But his overwhelming point was truth. Tell the truth. And I'm not talking about like white lies, like who flooded the basement toilet downstairs. I'm talking about like being authentically you and nothing less. He's like,
Yep.
what choice do I have? If I lie, I'm going to get something that I really don't deserve because I'm creating a false reality. So what's the alternative? I might as well just be real and tell the truth. And when we do that, you're engaging with the life experience at its highest existence. And I know that's deep, and I'm not sure how we got here, but like again, a big turning point for me, going back to your question, that was really big for me to understand just how important. I thought I was broken, and I did a video of this on LinkedIn and Facebook not long ago. But really, and seriously, at 44 years, I thought I was broken for so many years, and I was never going to really fully rise until all of these things got figured out. I just don't have time. I got 4 kids, and I have a full-time job, and I'm starting a business. The truth is that I have everything I need. I don't have to apologize for how God created me. I've made mistakes. It is what it is. I'm going to take them, and I'm going to speak the greatest truth that I have to offer. I'm going to give it to the world. And I said this to somebody yesterday. I've been throwing a bunch of stuff out there on Facebook and TikTok lately, and it's just me just jamming for 90 seconds. I said this yesterday, and I've never articulated this before, because she's like, oh, I see you're posting a lot of videos. I go, let me tell you something. If you're finding value out of those videos, wonderful. But I go, you know who those videos are for? I go, they're for me, because that is an expression of who I am. I get more benefit out of anything, because, and it's not for me to throw it out there and be the man and ego and pride. And he's just trying to self-promote. No. This is an opportunity for me to express who I am. So really, I get the most joy and inspiration is coming from me just having the opportunity to go and share who I truly am. Past is riddled with good experience, bad experiences, good decisions, bad decisions. Here's the bottom line. You are who you are, and you're where you are because of your past experiences. So grab a hold of it, and go forward, and let it be your message of truth going forward.
I love it. And we're going to be wrapping up here, which I love it, because it's, I mean, you said this every time you speak, there's a lot to unpack. And I know we're going to have to do part 2, part 3. This is going to be a Marvel series. There's going to be a bunch more episodes coming in, but where can people find you?
Yeah, just use my name. My name is the handle of most of my social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm on Insta. I'm with all the kids on Insta. And I told my kids I would never have a TikTok account. I made one just as purely a platform because I saw everybody else doing it. But I honestly, follow me. I would love it. And if the message resonates, if this resonates with you, follow me. I'm just going to throw more stuff out there. And again, full disclosure, I'm doing it as just a way to project to the world who I am, because that's what I'm being called to do. So I'd love a follow and a reach out. And if it inspires you, great. I would love to connect, but that's the main areas you can find me.
I love it, guys. So definitely, the links to connect with Jerrid is going to be in the description. So just do me a favor, go check out the description. Show some love on LinkedIn. Definitely go check out the podcast. And obviously, if you're a financial advisor, you might be able to benefit from a consultation with Jerrid. So definitely go check it out. And Jerrid, it was an absolute pleasure having you on.